I'm Esther Averum on Eaton Radio, and I'm here with Clement Guerra, director of The Eagle and the Condor, and Judith Nieto, an environmental justice activist based in Houston. Welcome to Eaton Radio, Clement and Judith. Well, this movie, this tremendous documentary, is about how indigenous people are empowering themselves and uniting globally as leaders of the environmental justice movement. And your film covers so much of this critical time when fossil fuel conglomerates are fighting hard to extract the last fossil fuels beneath the ground. And some of the fiercest resistance to this fatal blow to the climate is being waged by indigenous people. So first, tell us about how you went about capturing and telling this global story.
Okay, hey, good morning to everyone. Thank you for having us today. So it all started very, normally or organically. That's how the storyline and the whole adventure started. We were having for 10 years like corporate jobs with my wife, who co-directed the film. Sophie, my wife, and we decided, to go on a journey, try to understand better the environmental issues of our time. So we took a flight, we landed in New York, and we heard that at the time would take place the Cowboy and Indian Alliance. So this was the cowboys, the farm people, and the Indians, indigenous folks, coming together in order to build the alliances they needed in order to stop the KXL pipeline. And so we showed up, and that was the first time really we met with indigenous people. And it was pretty beautiful to see that happening, with such like unity and enthusiasm, to see indigenous people very open to, build alliances with the, descendants of the colonizers was very inspiring. And so on stage, there was like so many people, and on stage, stepped in this beautiful elder, Casey Kemp Horinek. And I looked at Sophie, and I was like, wow, this woman is beautiful. She's having such an amazing beauty with her. And I told Sophie, I hope that someday we will be able to work with her. And Sophie looked at me, she was like, it will never happen. And so basically that's how it started. And then we went to San Francisco. We met within I Don't Know More, San Francisco Bay Area. We became friends with them. And they connected us to Casey Camp. And then we managed to go to the tar sands, met with Brian and Judith from Houston. And finally went to Oklahoma Ponca and met with Casey. And that's how we met basically all the protagonists.
And also I'm wondering, as a director, how do you ensure that those voices come through, that the voices of the people come through as opposed to your filter?
That was the main question from, day one. And from day one, it was clear that there wouldn't be any voiceover in this film. And our approach would be an immersive approach and some kind of anthropological approach. So we would need a long time. So we filmed 1.5 years during, without going back to Europe. And action and interactions give room for the storyline to move forward. And therefore, our voice as the directors or white folks is never represented. We are not speaking for ourselves, but we let the protagonists speak for themselves and by themselves. And we hope that this will be a very strong statement for filmmaking, storytelling, and for media makers that need to be more, I think, uplifting voices instead of using them for their own benefit.
Right. And Judith, tell me a little bit about what it was like to, I guess, have your story documented. And do you, let's just start with that.
Yeah, I mean, it was new to me. Clement following me around with a huge camera and, walking around different places and being seen, with a camera behind me.
You had an entourage.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, and even now, like, I see the film, I'm like, get really shy. But also, I started doing movement work through the Keystone XL pipeline as well, and I ended up going to DC and getting arrested in front of the White House and meeting all these beautiful people that were representing their communities. And one of my fears was questioning that, you know, what am I doing here? Like, I don't need this kind of attention. I'm just little old me. You know, this makes me feel uncomfortable. But one of the things that I remember still today that Sharif Foytlin actually told me was that I wasn't doing it for myself anymore. I was representing a community. I was representing a group of people that have been silenced.
Right.
You know, I come from one of the most polluted communities in Houston, and it's ground zero for sacrificing. It's a sacrifice zone for the city. And I wasn't doing it for myself anymore. It was for those people that are there in that zone and not able to come out to these types of events because of whatever reasons, right? And so I wasn't doing it for me anymore. I wasn't representing myself. And so that kind of, I kept that in the back of my mind every time Clement would tell me to go here and go there and direct it in some way. And I remembered, like, I'm not doing this for me. You know, this story needs to be told. We're doing this for our people and people of color everywhere that are at the fence line of industry. So it took me some time, you know, and we're still learning too how to do this right and how to represent communities in the right way and in a more authentic, respectful way. And even myself, like, I have to check myself as well. Like, when I walk into a place where I have to remind myself I'm not here for me, for you, the Nieto. I'm here for the community. You know, I'm here for the movement that is trying to uplift those voices.
So, especially for the people who will be looking forward to seeing the film, you know, just give us a taste of, you know, the community you come from, how it's been impacted by fossil fuels and this kind of, you know, plunder really of the earth, and the community you come from in terms of the indigenous roots of that community.
Yeah, I mean, my community is predominantly Latinx, Mexican American. Some are undocumented and are too scared to come out. But, you know, we are also in that process of decolonizing our minds and decolonizing what we know, because like myself, I come from indigenous roots, but I didn't grow up in that way, you know, though we have a tribal way of living in my family and we're there for each other, and those things you just never forget, right? We're not Native American per se. And so it's just, I also represent those people, that generation of young people that have been assimilated into a different way of being and into a different way of thinking, and going back to those places and reconnecting to our indigenous roots. I feel like that's also the message, is to reconnect and to remember, you know, and uplift that part of us that has been colonized and has been extracted from us as well.
Now, a lot of people know, or a lot of us who cover environmental justice issues know about the tremendous havoc that Hurricane Harvey had on Houston, and the pollution that's really still having an impact there, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But your involvement in the movement began well before that. So just give us a little, sketch out a little bit about how those early movements around Keystone XL kind of led to continued, you know, social justice activism work that led up to and through Harvey.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Brian, I'd been learning about Brian's work way before I got involved in high school. And so his work also kind of spearheaded a different type of movement, a cultural movement, where he was fighting for Chicano studies and Mexican American studies in school so that we also learn our history as migrant people. And so I come from that and he comes from that. And that's also connected because he was already putting in those seeds of, you know, reconnecting to those histories that we'd forgotten and had been taken out of the textbooks. But then leading up to movement work and environmental movement work, it set the precedent for how we wanted to move forward before Harvey, and then moving forward on what was coming. Harvey was just one of those impacts due to climate change, and it's not going to be the last.
Right.
You know, and so it kept preparing the people, the communities, to start thinking in an environmental justice framework and to reconsider how we've been planning for the city or for disasters and things like that. And I think that the work prior to even me kind of helped the community in Houston to start developing different collectives, different groups of people with an understanding of all these intersections and how to include environmental justice in everything that we do, because we are at ground zero for a chemical disaster or a natural disaster that could lead to a much more serious chemical disaster. So I think, you know, Houston, there was a big hashtag going on after Harvey, Houston Strong, you know, and that's a little weird too in the Houston community, because some people do feel the Houston Strong hashtag, right? But there are some people that are like, well, we've been asking for these things for decades now, and barely now you want to reconsider redeveloping the city around climate change. You know, we've been doing the work, so there's a little bit of tension there with that, but I think it also helps to question a lot of things, you know, and to remind ourselves that we still have a lot of work to do and have a lot of work to put in moving forward. And climate change is going to hit us really hard.
Yeah.
And we need to really prepare ourselves and think about that.
So in addition to the issue with fossil fuel companies and the way that they are, the extractive industries, you know, it's also, the story told is also kind of a spiritual story, it's a cultural story. And so I want to ask both of you about that. I guess from the director's perspective, you know, tell me about kind of documenting that and how you know, how important that was. And I guess from your perspective as an activist, how important it was to have the cultural and spiritual aspect included in the work, and then also want to kind of get to the kind of join together of people from the North and the South.
Want to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yes, you're right to point this out. This film features, you know, like the issues coming from oil exploration, but it's really a spiritual quest. So what we have been trying to do is to engage audiences and to build a storyline, very powerful storyline, around an emotional journey the four protagonists are going through as they finally meet Mother Earth, which is the Amazonian rainforest, beautiful forests with such amazing biodiversity, but still in prey of a huge destruction and pain and sorrow. So it invites everybody, and not only indigenous people, to reconnect with our roots, and, you know, to understand that we are not separate egos and individuals, but we are all connected, all connected to the whole. Is what spirituality is, you know. It's not about a dogma, about a church. It's about the effort we need to go through to rediscover our attachment, deep attachment to our roots, you know. So this film tries to show that we actually can, a tangible way, you know, reclaim our native land, which is mostly within, you know, by building the alliances we need to protect the land, you know, which is our outside roots. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it has been almost a way of healing, a healing journey, because like Clemenceau said, we are trying to reconnect to the land, to the natural world, you know, to a more natural state of being, and I think the Amazonian folks are kind of our guides in that, because they're still in territories that are still pristine and natural and beautiful, and they're still able to live off of them. And we're coming from places where our natural world has been completely developed, and industry is just completely overriding everything, and our water is contaminated. We can no longer work with our soil. You know, that's also contaminated. So it's healing to make these connections to people that are still fighting to protect it, but also just living their lives in the way that we were intended to live, you know, and being our guides in the work that we're doing. and also for the colonizers, right? For the people who come from ancestors that were colonizers, it's healing to see that they're now putting a different light or different work into the healing process. And there's something happening with these relationships where we're having to sit down and have difficult conversation, or check each other, or call each other out, or just have those conversations of like, well, you know, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm feeling. And we gotta keep in mind the historical trauma that our people, our ancestors, had to walk with, you know, and now we're inheriting, and figuring out how to continue to be protectors and guardians of this natural world, but finding focus and finding purpose in the work that we're doing, and also just going inward too, and realizing or figuring out how we're going to be the guardians of that change, and how we're going to actually implement that change with the way that we live our lives. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's been the biggest lesson. You know, I traveled to the Amazon and met all these beautiful people, and saw the world that I was fighting to protect in a different light, and came back home and looked around and saw like all of the refineries and chemical plants that had completely surrounded my family, and so it helped to, even though it was a really hard thing to see and experience, it helped to really focus and really regain that strength of why is it that I'm doing what I'm doing, and how am I going to move forward from this moment on, and how I'm going to live my life from this moment on to honor the people that I just made connections with, you know.
And also the whole idea of people, indigenous people from the North and the South kind of coming together. I mean, what kind of impact have you seen that have? You know, I know people came from all over to go to Standing Rock, but just in terms of, in addition to that, what have you seen in terms of the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen different groups form. I've seen different relationships form that needed to happen. You know, we're building bridges to each other, and I think even though maybe we might have not been able to stop a policy that was going to give way to permits in different regions, or stop extraction from a different region, the connections and the relationships that were built because of that struggle was the biggest win of all, you know, because now those seeds have been planted, and now we're waiting for that to blossom, right? And it is. And it's blossoming into beautiful other movements and intersectional movements where we're including each other, and we're trying to include everyone.
I just wanted to pinpoint the fact that this film is, all the issues tackled in the film are still ongoing, you know. And the KXL pipeline, they started constructing again the pipeline 2 weeks ago. The communities we worked with in South America, their land was actually sold to Chinese industries. The Yasuni National Park, where you see Judith went, the most biodiverse place in the world, they started drilling for oil 2 years ago. We need to get this film out there and to the world for the people to understand that the urgency is real, and climate change is not tomorrow, and oil destruction is like causing amazing harm right now. So that's why I really think, you know, and thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to San Francisco, where we first screened our work in progress, our film, at the Castro Theater in front of 1,000 people, you know, last week. We are traveling to DC, to San Francisco, to New York, to Seattle, to Vancouver, and beyond, in order to raise the funds we need to finish the post-production of our film. Because we need those, you know, this film to get out to the world and to convey this sense of urgency that we need to do something about it now before it's too late. And it might be already too late, so it's no time to just, you know, wander around and say, maybe I'll do that later. So that's why we are calling out to the public and say, please support our initiative. because our film is 100% independent. And for such a, like large film of a large scale to be still independent and uplifting of indigenous and impacted communities, it's very challenging in terms of like funding money or funding the film, raising funds. So that's why we are leading a crowdfunding campaign so that we can still, hope to be independent, but finish the film in time before, it's too late. Thank you.
So give us the details on the crowdfunding campaign.
So we are raising $35,000 with what we need to finish the post-production. We aim to finish the post-production by December 2018 and to premiere the finished film in January 2019. And you guys can just go to our crowdfunding page, which is www.thecondorandtheeagle.com.
Okay, so thecondorandtheeagle.com has your link if people want to support the film.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank my guests, Clement Guerra and Judith Nieto, from the film The Condor and the Eagle. This is Esther Verum on Eaton Radio.